I just want to say this is our first, we've got a lot of people here. This is a good thing. This is our first legislative breakfast that we've done by Zoom. I'm Lynn Dickinson. I'm the chair of the Franklin County Delegation, and we'll quickly have people introduce themselves when we get to a point to do that. But I just want to talk about some, well, this is our first one, and we opened it up to everyone through as much media as we could. I just want to remind everyone that you're more than welcome to speak up. We really want to hear what you have to say. Please do not be shy. We do want to ask that there be some ground rules, that we will have civility, and that we will be respectful of each other. Because this is such, we ask that you identify yourself and tell us what town you're from so we know who you are. And what we also we want to remind you that if we have any kind of the danger of Zoom bombing is real, and if we have anything like that, we will have to shut the session down. We're going to be a little creaky at this, probably here for this first time, but we ask for your patience, and you know, we really do want to hear what you have to say, and I want to let the legislative delegation speak about what's going on in their committees. It looks like we're getting a good group, so I really appreciate it. If you want to speak, for those of you who know how to use Zoom and can use the raised hand, that's a good way. I'm going to depend on Casey to call people out as the names come up. If you don't know how to do that, just raise your hands and just, you know, really try to indicate to the rest of us that you're looking to say something or have a question. With that, I'm going to ask everyone, all the delegation, to introduce themselves. Like I said, I'm Lynn Dickinson. I'm the chair of the delegation. I represent St. Albans Town. I serve on the Commerce Committee. And we are starting to do, just barely starting our committee work. We will do stuff involved. We did a lot of stuff in the fall on the CRF money, the Corona Relief Fund money. And we've done a little bit with budget adjustment so far this past week. Casey, can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Representative Casey Toof. I serve St. Albans and St. Albans City and St. Albans Town, Franklin 3-1, along with Representative Mike McCarthy. I serve on the House Education Committee again. Hold on, I'm admitting some more people into the waiting room. It's my second term on the House Education Committee. And Lynn, do you want to just keep going down the list, or?
Yeah, well, we got Bob Norris with him.
Good morning. I'm Bob Norris. I represent Franklin 4, which is the townships of Sheldon and Swanton. I have been assigned to the House Judiciary Committee. We've been spending most of the week and a half, or almost 2 weeks now, simply going through orientation and training. It's a learning process for me. We're just starting to take testimony on a couple of bills. Other than that, it's been pretty much a learning experience for me. Thank you.
Karl.
Thank you. Representative Karl Rosenquist. I represent the town of Georgia, and I serve on the Human Services Committee. This is my third term on that committee. We mainly have been trying to catch up to date on how the coronavirus awards that we made during the last 6-8 months have worked out. Where were some of the shortfalls, where we need to do more work. We've reviewed the budget adjustment and really didn't have any major issues with the governor's recommendations. So that, as far as our committee is concerned, I don't think there's going to be much on that. We're listening to a lot of child care advocates as to the issues that they're still facing. From my constituents, one of the issues that they're concerned about is getting all the kids back to school all the time, but that's it seems to be moving in that direction, and we're thankful for that. So right now we haven't, I think the first piece of legislation we may be taking up is something on, I always get tongue-tied when I say this, but buprenorphine, the use of that on a casual basis before people go into treatment. Thank you.
Randy? Senator Brock?
Hi, I'm Senator Randy Brock. I represent Franklin County and Alberg in the Senate. I'm also the Senate Minority Leader. I serve on the Finance Committee, which deals with a whole range of things from taxes to regulation to technology. We're working particularly on the internet issue of ensuring that we get broadband finally to all of Vermont, and there's a lot of activity going on there. And we're also, from a tax standpoint, looking at revenue. And as you know, we had horrendous shortfalls in projected revenue. And the good news is that things have turned around substantially, in that we're getting a lot more money in than we initially anticipated. But the big but is it's still not yet enough. And so we have to work to close that gap. And Les, I also serve on the Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs Committee. And there, two big issues. One is unemployment, extending properly unemployment or other kinds of benefits to people who have been hurt and held back by the pandemic. And so we're doing a lot of work in that area. And lastly, housing. The issue of affordable housing is a major problem for Vermont. And we have lots of people who, if not falling through the crack, are having difficulty finding a housing. And we're looking at how to make affordable housing more affordable and also more available. Thanks.
Brian Savage.
Morning, Representative Brian Savage. I represent Franklin 4, along with Representative Bob Norris, the towns of Swanton and Sheldon. This is, I've been reappointed to the House Transportation Committee. This is my third term on that committee. We've spent the first couple of weeks, as we always do, hearing and getting updates from the Agency of Transportation and all the various divisions and departments that make that up. We have worked on our budget adjustment. There was some just fairly minor adjustments to the budget as far as transportation is concerned. And amazingly, the transportation fund is not that bad of shape, surprisingly. So there was really just some very minor adjustments that needed to be done through the budget that came from the governor's office. We got that out last week, and we're all anxious to hear the budget address of the governor, which is going to be tomorrow, and then we'll get to work on the fiscal year 22 budget as soon as we get the materials, which there was some discussion on how we're going to get that this year. The transportation budget, it comes in which becomes the bill, is in a 3-ring binder, probably 300 to 400 or more pages. It's not practical to have that over Zoom. So it's going to have to somehow get delivered to us in person. So it may take a week or so to get that, but the agency is certainly working on that. So we look forward to it.
Thank you. Mike McCarthy, please.
Thanks. I'm Mike McCarthy. I represent St. Albans City and the southern part of St. Albans Town in Franklin 3-1 with Representative Toof. I am on a new committee, the House Government Operations Committee, and we got the first bill out of the House, H48, that gave some flexibility to towns and some funding to support a safe town meeting day election. So we hit the ground running there. We spent the last week or so talking about a variety of issues in various technical corrections, but I think the most interesting thing is that we've been diving into some of the work that we started last year around criminal justice reinvestment and reform, and funding for the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council that trains all law enforcement officers, and some changes that we're making there. So we're going to be talking about that and pensions and a whole lot more on government operations this year. So been very busy in committee. I also was elected to be the House Majority Whip. So I work with the Speaker and the Majority Leader and the rest of the House leadership team on the Democratic side to help set the agenda, and also on the Rules Committee with the all caucus, all House leadership rather, in the other parties to make sure that we can do our work well, especially in this wild Zoom legislative environment. So it has been a busy start to the session. I'm also anxious to start working on the next year's budget, and thankful that the Vermont economy is not doing nearly as badly as we had projected back in August, as both Senator Brock and Representative Savage discussed, and could throw a lot of questions about sort of the gaps that we still have, and the benefit that we've had from a lot of federal money. It's complicated, but the long and the short of it is that we're much, much better shape than we had thought in the August economic forecast, now that we have a new economic forecast in January. So we're going to try to make sure that we spend that money wisely and invest it so that we have a Vermont economy that doesn't leave anybody behind in this recovery. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Representative Barbara Murphy.
Thank you, Lynn. I am Barbara Murphy. Good morning, and I serve Fairfax in the district titled Franklin 2. I'm also vice chair of the Franklin County Delegation, which I've been promised isn't really a lot of work. I was reassigned to a new committee. I now am learning and serving on the General Housing and Military Affairs Committee after serving on transportation for 6 years. It's quite exciting to be learning new aspects of our government process. We've had 13 bills assigned to the committee, 9 that we've already at least had an initial introduction to by their sponsor. Some have had more testimony and a great deal of committee attention. The education department has the new state law for providing health insurance for our school employees just went into effect 2 years ago, and truly is in its first year of being used and already needs some adjustments, as things do. So there's some discussion and difference of opinion of what some of those changes should be. And those are reflected in 2 bills that we are trying to juggle and paste into one that will assist that process to continue forward. We're also doing a great deal of work with the homeless and housing focus, as Senator Brock spoke to, and looking at how the CRF and CARES money was spent on those areas of need in our society communities, and hoping to continue to keep people under safe cover and get people housed and in homes. Going to that, we're looking at the rental assistance and eviction moratorium, and how, again, we can keep going forward with keeping people able to maintain their housing. We're looking at the basic needs budget and livable wage. And we also did a review of those pieces of the Budget Adjustment Act that we had oversight or opinions to give on, and did feel that the final look at that was what we could agree to and support in recommendation to the Appropriations Committee. So it's a whole lot of different work every day, very different from being on transportation, where there was a more lasered focus on one aspect of people's needs. So great to be here this morning.
Okay, Felicia Leffler from Innisburg, please.
Good morning, Representative Felicia Leffler. Going into my second term, I've been reassigned to a different committee. Well, reassigned, it's early. I've been assigned to a new committee. I'll be serving on judiciary for this term. Coming from corrections and institutions, there's a lot of overlap, particularly with the Justice Reinvestment Bill that we worked quite a bit on last session to kind of get past. We'll start getting reports back on that and being able to judge what our next steps should be. So I expect that to take up quite a bit of our time this session. We've also started right into 2 bills, H18 and H20. H20 is looking at the use of some screening assessments in pretrial services and who should be able to access those, ideally expanding it to juveniles should they need be. We're having quite a bit of discussion around that. And H18 is just updating what is what is seen as child pornography under the law so that we can kind of sweep in some of the tech advancements that allow for something to appear as what it is not. And I expect we'll be doing quite a bit of work in this committee. We've also been reviewing some of the CRF dollars that went to the judiciary and the impact of COVID onto the courts. Probably one of the biggest issues that we are facing is that we're seeing testimony come in already that because of the backlog, due to the courts being closed down or just operating much more slowly right now, if somebody wanted to take a case to trial, they could be looking at 5 to 6 years. So we will definitely be addressing how to take care of the court backlog and make sure that justice is served most appropriately. But it's going to be quite a bit of work, and I'm excited to get to learn the other aspect of corrections that I was working on previously and more about the judicial system. I think that's just about all I've got.
Thank you, Senator Parent.
Thanks, Lynn. Sorry I'm a few minutes late. I have a childcare drop off at 7:30, so ran right to my office after that. But this session, I'm serving on Senate Agriculture, which makes sense. Franklin County is the largest dairy county in New England. So it's good to have representation there for us from an economic development perspective. We're really just starting to analyze, some of the COVID dollars that went out in the last couple months. Particularly, we put a cap on benefits. So we didn't give out all of our COVID dollars, but we had oversubscription and needs. So potentially looking to adjust those. I'm also on the Senate Institutions Committee, which will deal with which deals with the capital bill. But that starts in the House, so a lot of our work will be in the second half of the year when that comes over. But we're just kind of just breaking into some testimony on various things that impact the state's bonding capacity, including we've got the report from the treasurer on teacher and state employee pensions. So we won't have much say there, but we'll be analyzing what it means from a bonding perspective. But that's where I am. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. I think that's all the legislators we have here. We have several who cannot make it, 2 or 3. Yes, Casey.
I think Paul Martin jumped on.
Paul Martin. Okay, Paul, if you're here, please introduce yourself and, oh, there you are. Paul is here. Go ahead, Paul.
Good morning. Yes, I jumped on a little bit late too. So I kind of missed the intros. I just heard Casey's. What exactly are we looooking for? Just like the committee we're on? And
yeah, just introduce yourself, do a brief explanation of your committee, what town you represent.
Sure.
Towns.
So Paul Martin, I represent the towns of Richford, Franklin, Berkshire, and Highgate. I'm on the House Economic Development Committee with Lynn. We've been taking testimony really since the beginning of the session. We've worked on, I think, really one bill so far. So we haven't done a whole lot, but we are, I think, prepping to do a lot. So.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm not sure that this is, there's a real wide range of people who are tuned into us today, and that's really a good thing. But one of the things that we have discovered in the course of our listening to people talk about the coronavirus relief funds and the different programs that were run through the Agency of Commerce and Community Development and with the tax department and all the grants. And I believe other people on the delegation can talk about this as well, is the lack of financial literacy among small businesses particularly, or people who are sole proprietor, independent contractors, very small businesses, people who really don't know how to put together through QuickBooks or anything like that, who are trying to, could be restaurant owners, it could be just a small business. As we all know, the hospitality industry was really hit hard by COVID. But there's a lot of financial literacy. There's a lack of financial literacy that if anyone here has any suggestions on that, that is something that has emerged as one of the major issues for people applying for grants, whether it be, you know, whatever sector of the economy you're talking about, including agriculture. Does anyone else have any big issues? I know that the agriculture community had a huge issue with that as well. And when Senator Parent talks about oversubscription requests, there were only was so much money available that was granted by legislation, but they weren't able to give it all out because there weren't people who had the amount of financial wherewithal to go and understand how to apply or how to get that information to the agency. Any questions on any of that or any other questions? Go ahead, Marilyn. You're muted, Marilyn. Maybe.
Yeah, I know. The thing that I'm very, very concerned about, would like to hear from whoever's involved in this, is this whole thing on teacher and state employee retirement. I've seen it several times on the news, and it's not clear as to what's actually going on. And
yeah.
I'd like to know.
Yes, you weren't the only one. I don't know. Does anybody have any? Okay, Mike, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Marilyn. And I've corresponded with a number of very concerned teachers over the weekend. So you'll recall that for the last few years, we've been really facing an issue where the amount of money that has been put into pension funds isn't enough to cover the liabilities in the out years. And the gap there got increased significantly in the latest actuarial calculations. And so there are a number of factors that impact that. One is that the treasurer and the board that advises her on pensions, you know, they said, well, the funds are going to grow at a 7% rate instead of 7.5%. And any of us who have, you know, retirement investments know that when you lower the expected rate of return, the amount of money that you expect to have 20, 25, 30 years from now is going to be a lot less. They're expecting that the retirees are going to live longer and take benefits longer. And there have been a number of earlier retirements than expected because of, you know, the COVID, and you know, teachers are really facing a challenging environment. And you know, my daughter's a third grader at St. Albans City School. I can't tell you how appreciative I am of the way that the school and the teachers in that community have stepped up. And so, you know, this couldn't be a worse time to scare these professionals about their retirement. So the treasurer, in response to this, put out a report, I think it was a week ago, Friday, that had, you know, some suggestions about how to maintain the pension fund, how to keep it solvent. And we're taking those suggestions from the treasurer really seriously, but at this point, no decisions have been made about how exactly to address the increased gap between the liabilities and the funding and the pensions. So we're going to take a real deep dive and say, you know, is that actuarial reevaluation, is it, you know, should the number really be 7.2% instead of 7.5? How much more money do we need to ask teachers or the state to put into those funds? And are there changes like the treasurer had suggested where we change some of the terms for not existing retirees, but you know, retirees in the future, so that, you know, the cost of living increases that they get aren't as substantial or phase out. So that's kind of all the top level stuff that I know right now, but no decision has been made. But, you know, Treasurer Pierce tried to tell us, hey, the writing's on the wall. We need to do something about this. And Speaker Koinski's made it very clear that the relevant committees, including mine, government operations, and of course, all of the financial committees in the House and the Senate, are going to be looking at beginning to address these pension shortfalls in the out years. But in none, I want to reassure people that in none of what Treasurer Pierce suggested was there getting rid of the defined benefit plans or making changes for current retirees. And so there's been a lot of misinformation, especially online, that I think has added to the anxiety. And it's a really serious situation, and we are going to have to make changes, no doubt. But some of the things I've been reading are just not correct. And so I really encourage you, to contact your legislator or Treasurer Pierce's office and really read the report that she put out if you have questions about it.
Yeah, that's really been the problem. Even the news broadcast on CBS when Beth was on it, it sounded as if there weren't going to be any more pensions for teachers and that they were going to be cutting state employees. And I've just seen a bunch of stuff like you said, Mike, and I would have called you over the weekend or one of you over the weekend, but decided I'd just see you here tomorrow and it'd be good for other people to hear about it. So I mean, basically, my whole opinion on this is if for some reason they have to cut the and I hope they're not going to cut obviously the current retirees, but this whole COVID thing, and that absolutely is a real reason why so many more people have jumped into the jumped into retirement, that I would hope that there would be some COVID relief for retirees, or you're going to have the older people in a real mess, especially the people older than I am that have been retired for years, that perhaps are just living on their Social Security, and their teachers are retirement. So anyway, thank you, Mike. Appreciate the update.
Barbara, I think you had your hand up.
I did, Lynn, but Mike really very beautifully covered it, and I was not looking at the retirement piece. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, Marilyn, you've been around a long time in education, and you probably remember some of these things. Back in the 90s, when I sat on a school board here locally, Howard Dean, when the stock market was going crazy, it was doing really well, he decided not to put money into the teachers' retirement fund from the state like they normally had. And that went on for a few years, and that's part of the, it just lost the real miracle of compound interest in earning money while that was not being invested on a regular basis, and that's part of it. The other issue, and I don't know when this exactly happened, but the health insurance, what they call the OPEB, the benefits after you retire, the health insurance mostly for the teachers, does not have a separate fund. The Vermont state employees have a separate fund for their health insurance post-retirement. The teachers do not. So subsequently, when they paid the insurance, the health insurance for retired teachers, it came right out of the pension fund. And that was not a good thing to do, And I think that we did this a couple of years ago. We tried to correct that in the legislature. We also have a plan now that we've had for the past maybe 3 or 4 years to try to catch up. And it goes out 30 years. I mean, it's not something you can do immediately, but it has increased allocations to the pension funds from the general fund so that we actually will eventually catch up. The problem is that we did have a lot of teachers who retired because of COVID. And so that put pressure again on the teachers and probably some on the state employees. And we have an aging population. So obviously we have more and more people who are going to be on the pension system. There's a guy named David Coates, who's an accountant out of Burlington, who's been talking about this probably for 20 years. He actually spoke to the legislature one year in a caucus of the whole about the dangers of this, maybe about 10 years ago or so. So this is something that people in state government have been aware of and legislators have been aware of, but it really was only like in the past 4 or 5 years that they finally stepped up to the plate and actually started to work on a plan to solve it and to put money into it. But it's a serious issue all the way around.
Oh, it is, yeah.
I mean, obviously you've got an obligation, you've made obligations to lots of people who are expecting to retire and making plans based on that. And, the legislature probably fell down on the job. And maybe the governors did, it's just a difficult situation.
Yeah, well, I can remember, and I might be remembering wrong, but somehow along the way, I thought there was some money that was either to go to education that came out of the general fund that went to AOT, or they actually took money from the teachers' pension fund, which I don't think they could do actually.
I don't think they could.
Yeah, AOT, but I can remember some of that going on too. I don't know if any of you were around when that was happening. That was quite a while ago.
Yeah, maybe there was something to do with I don't know, maybe Brian, you can talk about that. There was something to do with transportation that was getting, was it the school busing or?
I'm sorry, I'm having problems unmuting myself. Okay, here we go. Yeah, well, over the course of many years, the transportation fund was actually rated, for lack of a better term, of funds that went into education and possibly other departments, including the Department of Public Safety to pay the state police. Was called JTOG money, and we still make a contribution to the state police out of the transportation fund. However, it's more realistic because there was a study done, and that's to compensate the state police for the patrol of the highways. So that's why the transportation fund is not where it should be, and why a lot of projects over the course of years, and I'm talking 25, maybe 30 years, the roads and bridges and things of that nature in other areas were basically let go because of the lack of the funding. So that is a little bit I know, and I got that from prior members of the body, as well as prior people who've sat on the transportation committee, as I said, in the last 25 or 30 years. There is a lot of disinformation being out there. I've had some teachers and former teachers contact me somehow, and this happened a few years ago when it was being talked about. I was invited to speak at a luncheon meeting of the retired Franklin County Teachers Committee, our association. I'm not sure if that's the exact title, but the person who invited me was my first grade teacher. And so I certainly went to it. This was a number of years ago. I think I was like in my first or second term. And they had gotten information that their benefits would be cut, if not taken away by the state. And that simply is not true. It wasn't true then. I have not heard such draconian statements being made at this point. But the bottom line and the whole thing of the teachers' retirement system and state employees' retirement system is that we've got to do something. This has gotten the attention of the bond underwriters and the rating agencies. That could, if it's not corrected to in a situation that is to satisfy those people, of the rating agencies, this can certainly affect our bond ratings going forward because it's an unfunded obligation. So there's no easy answer. But again, the writing's on the wall. I think the can is pushed down the road just for too long, and we have to come up with a workable plan that's fair and equitable to everybody.
Anyone else have anything to ask or any other comments? Go ahead, Michelle.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you for serving, especially in those difficult times. I can appreciate how hard your work must be. Lynn, I want to go back to what you were saying about the small businesses not being able to apply. There is no help coming from the government. There is no help coming from the state as far as a streamlined application process. I know that in some instances, banks have been helping people fill out application, but so what you're telling us is that people are left alone trying to figure out how to apply. Is that what you're telling us, Lynn?
Yeah, that is the part of the issue, is that people who have not had sophisticated or who are not sophisticated as they could be have had difficulty in applying for some of the state grants. Certainly the PPP grant, you needed to work with the bank. The issue is also that there is, and we heard testimony from several people even just this past 2 weeks about technical assistance. There are organizations, nonprofit organizations, there's state agencies that will help provide some public-private, nonprofits that will help provide technical assistance. And the goal is to try to match those organizations up with the people who need help. We heard specifically, and there's several organizations that help with women's businesses. There's a whole alphabet soup of them. There's several of them, and they all help with the technical assistance. Most women and minorities are very small businesses, one-person businesses, sole proprietor, and they have access. The women's businesses, if you take advantage of it or are aware of it, have access to technical support. The Agency of Commerce and Community Development can steer you toward that. We listened to Curtis Reed, who talked about the fact that minorities don't have, people of color normally don't have business organizations, and they don't always feel comfortable in the traditional business organizations like the Chamber or the Vermont Social Responsibility businesses. They don't have like an organization that is there, that is helping serve them with things like technical support and a support system for small businesses. There was an article about it actually in Digger this past couple of days. But that's the kind of, the farmers have their groups that they can turn to, but it's hard for people who are just working out of their home or in very small businesses, working and trying to develop a business to get access to some of that technical support. And people are really too busy working in their business to work on their business, to take that time away to go and spend a couple of hours or more working with people sometimes takes away from the work that you feel you have to do in your business. It's an issue, and it's out there, and we're trying to find a way to provide that technical support. A lot of the money went to those nonprofits. Some of the CRF money went to those nonprofits to provide that ability. There were lots of groups dealing with restaurants and trying to feed. There's a name of organizations they put money toward to help distribute food to people who had food, the food
insecurity.
desert.
Yeah.
The hunger.
We did fund VHCB for our farmers to help them out last year.
What is HCB?
VHCB, Vermont Housing Conservation Board.
Yes, that too.
And we're looking to continue that. And we're also talking to other organizations who we might be able to support to provide that. But that being said, the federal government's also going to be making some of these standards tougher. So the new renter program is going to require income verification. So that's going to slow down helping out our low-income renters who haven't been able to pay rent or behind on their rent. The last 6 months, they just had to have a signature from them and their landlord. So, the rules keep changing. I don't think, mere question that, there's nothing out there to help Vermonters. We're certainly we tried to help, and then where we're finding that we had shortfalls, we're trying to shore those up in the upcoming weeks so that as more money comes in, we can make sure we're helping everyone who needs it.
Lynn asked, and I'll stop after that. Lynn asked for help or ideas to shuffle. I think, for what I hear from my community and the little bit that I hear, is that people are not informed about what can happen and how. For PPP, for example, I think a lot of the small businesses that I talk to are saying, well, it's borrowed money. Why should I borrow more money? I already owe money to my bank. I already owe money to XYZ. Without being aware, I guess, that to some extent, it may be a grant. It may be monies that they don't have to pay back. So I think there is the very first thing will be to be very specific into how you present the palette of what's available to small business, and to make it very very visible. And I don't know how you make it very visible, but I don't think it's been cut into small chunk enough for people to be able to swallow them. It's a big chunk. A lot of the small business think that it's only for the big business, the people that have a lot of employees, that they're going to have to pay it back. So my suggestion would be make it streamlined as far as no, it's not. It's for you. It's for the small guys, and also make it understandable. It like all programs, it's very nebulous.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. And one of the issues that came up, and we've got a whole bunch of hands here, but one of the things that came up is that it was very confusing because nobody knew which program they belonged in, which one had what criteria, which one had, which was a loan, which was a grant. There were lots of opportunities and different websites for the state agencies to find that out, and different other organizations hooked into that. I want to go to Paul Anderson first, and then
Can I
after that.
Lynn, I had my hand up just for a really quick point on the topic we're on, if I could.
Okay, Barbara, go ahead. And
I
then
just
we'll
was
go to
going
Paul
to say,
Anderson.
when you spoke to the literacy piece, the financial literacy, I think it goes way back that some of the issues people had was they don't keep records in a way that made them able to do fill in the blank. And so that, I think, is the comprehensive financial literacy, is helping people understand how to set that up. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. Paul, you're next.
Hi, good morning. Sorry, I don't have a camera. First, I'd like to thank all of our senators and representatives for serving. I think folks don't really appreciate the amount of time it takes to serve in those roles. So thank you for that. I'm sure you're not in it for the money. And thanks for this breakfast. I think it's a great way to hear directly from constituents what's on their mind. So I'll keep it brief. I have two, and they're pretty straightforward. First of all, I'd like you to oppose any additional infringement of our Second Amendment rights. I recently saw where Senator Baruth introduced about a half a dozen anti-Second Amendment pieces of legislation. I can't believe in this environment he thinks that's the priority of the people. So I would just briefly say I would oppose any further infringement on our Second Amendment rights. It seems like it's a problem in search of a solution. The second thing is spending. Frankly, Vermont's in terrible shape. As you compare us to other states that are thriving, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, Wyoming, they're all doing that because of a low tax base. There's no income tax. The property tax is much lower than Vermont. Let me give you a personal quick example. I recently sold my mother's house in Tennessee. It's a 2,500 square foot, nice house, lake community. Her taxes were $2,500 a year. I have a similar size house here in Fairfax. My taxes are $9,000 a year. And that's on top of a 6% plus income tax that Tennessee, Florida, Texas don't have. So I think really, if we want Vermont to thrive, we really have to take some bold action to cut spending. And I quickly looked at, I don't have a magic wand here for you, but I quickly looked at the budget from a very top level. And it seems to me 2/3 of it is spent on education and Medicaid. So I think we understand where the 500-pound gorilla in the room is, and I think bold actions required to cut spending in those areas specifically, but also across the board, and a corresponding reduction in taxes, both property and income tax. I would just quickly comment on the previous discussion, because it ties to this point about the teacher pensions. I don't think you could find a single company in the Fortune 50, maybe even the 500, that today has a defined benefit pension plan. COLAs and retiree health insurance, those are unicorns. They only exist in the education and government employee sector. I think you really have to look to the private sector that solve this problem. And frankly, that means no COLAs for existing retirees. It means immediate transition to a 401k retirement system for current employees. Again, you're not going to find anywhere in the private sector that has these benefits. And I think we have to recognize that it's time for Vermont to align with those folks who have solved this problem and are thriving. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I think David Southwick is next.
Thank you, Lynn. My name is Dave Southwick, and I represent two hats today. One is that I'm a city employee for the city of St. Albans, and two, I'm also the president of the board for Samaritan House, our homeless shelter in St. Albans, Franklin County. Lynn, I just wanted to speak just really briefly on the whole application process. I've been involved in two applications, and I want to compliment the state on their support. The first one was with the city, and it was a COVID related for scanning more records so that people could have access to them online. And while we weren't perfect in putting together our proposal, the state was very, very responsive in helping us make sure that we got things in, very forgiving It wasn't a cut and dry thing. If you didn't get it right, you didn't get shut back. They were very helpful and extended where they needed to. And I really wanted to extend an appreciation to them. And then on the PPP side, I really think that the answer for us at Samaritan House was a relationship with our bank. Both Key Bank and People's Trust in this area have done a super job of not only helping people through that process, but also educating. If you take a look at Jay Cummings and what he's doing at People's Trust, it's amazing. Every time a PPP comes out, he's all over social media trying to help people understand that they're there to help them. So I feel that we really have had help there. And while it is, the one thing you said, Lynn, that I agree with is that you have to have a couple hours if you want to do it. It's not something that you can just do over a cup of coffee in 15 minutes. Thank you all for your service.
Thank you, David. And Amy, you're next.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for hosting this in this bizarre format. I really love this opportunity to check in with you all every year or several times a year, and I appreciate you continuing to do this. I'm Amy Brewer with the Franklin Grand Isle Tobacco Prevention Coalition and Northwestern Medical Center. I like to check in with you guys and give you all your tobacco related updates for the year. I know how excited you are to hear it. So a few things I want to share with you. Recently, let's see, what's it called? The January 2021 Economic Review and Revenue Forecast Update came out. And it's a long document, but in there, I wanted to share that vaping tax revenue went through the roof during the pandemic, which is one of those yay for excise tax in the coffers, and boo, which means lots of people are using an addictive substance. During that time, we did do some surveying of young adults in Vermont and saw that maybe vaping didn't increase. So perhaps people who use vapes just use more as they were home. But what we saw was that young adults, those kind of 21 to 24-year-olds, actually increased their cigarette use, which is something we've been worried about, that vaping would actually increase cigarette use, and we know what happens from cigarette use. At the same time, there was a new research article that was released this month, actually, that showed research shows that people who are vaping are 3 times as likely to transition to daily cigarette users. So all of that says, whereas we had made great gains on cigarette use, and we've made pretty good gains on vaping, you all have put in really strong policies that have tried to prevent young adults or youth in particular from trying these products and becoming addicted. We're going to be experiencing a bloom in cigarette use, which means we are going to have to really put our time and energy and resources into promoting cessation, supporting cessation, and helping people to use those resources that we currently offer. So that's kind of where tobacco use is at the moment. And I know I emailed all of you, but I just wanted to remind you that our OVX rally that we usually have, where the kids come and they track you down in your committees or in whatever space you might be in the State House, usually every February. We can't do that this time, so we'll be having kind of a town hall event on February 11th. I think I emailed you the link. Unfortunately, you do have to pre-register just to keep that safe. But if you didn't get it or you want it again, please let me know and I will go ahead and send that to you. So thank you again for this time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions? Any other comments? David, can I ask you a question? David Southwick. When you made those applications that were so helpful from the state, what agency or what program did you apply for? Do you remember?
It was with, hang on a second, Jill Reddick. So it was Jill with the, I'm trying to think, who's she with? No, I'm drawing a complete blank, sorry. But the one that we did with the state was a grant to help fund scanning of public documents. Yeah. And Jill's team is Actually,
Secretary
I just
of
had,
State.
yeah, she may be part of the Secretary of State's team, yes.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. Many of the things that the grants went through, a lot of the business grants went through the Agency of Community Commerce and Community Development in conjunction with the Department of Taxes, because
Yeah,
they needed rooms and meals taxes and income tax information, things that only the tax department would have.
right,
So that was used, and you could apply through the ACCD, but then the application went to both and they worked together.
right.
The
I had tax in the back of my head and I just kept thinking that didn't feel right, but yes, that's where she is. And, you know, and again, to her credit, she answered the phone one time. So she's a director and she, you know, she picked the phone up, but I was just surprised that she was on the other end. I also serve on another committee with her, so I know her, but it was that kind of support that they were spreading out that really made it very doable.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. Anyone else have other good news like that? How about Amy? Is that still from before, or you have something more to add?
Something new, I apologize. I know Crystal Lampman from Franklin County Caring Communities had to leave to go bring her daughter to school. And I realized I should probably add, you know, the young adult survey that we have that was from the pandemic time period, which showed an increase in cigarette use amongst those young adults. Also showed pretty impressive increases in or started using or increased use of alcohol and marijuana, or cannabis. So just keep in mind, and it's a pretty cool study, and I'm happy to send you the link to the VDH page where that's listed. But you know, alcohol went from 23 or 23% of those older young adults had stopped using or decreased use, whereas 30% had started using or increased use. And it's a pretty big jump for cannabis as well in both the 18 to 21 and 21 to 25-year-olds. So just keep in mind that the younger the people use these substances, the more impact on their still continuing to develop brains, and the health impacts and the economic impacts related to those. And now I'll stop.
Thank you. Now, Marilyn, you're next. Maryland.
So I would like to dig a little deeper. You know, we talk about helping small businesses. What about their employees? I think a lot of people that have been let go, and this is just what I'm hearing in the community, don't know where to go to get help. They don't have that financial literacy piece. And what is available? What is available for that group of people, and where do you direct them? One of the things that BPW is thinking of doing is offering some sort of financial literacy program for those people. But the problem is for us is how do we find them? But if there was something out there at the state level that let people know what resources might be available, you know, we certainly could help with that. But I think about single mothers. I think about, you know, people that I've run into in the community that just are unemployed, don't know how to take advantage of these programs that might be available to them, and how to get back on their feet again. So I just wondered what might be available out there, what resources.
Well, that's a really good question. And of course, one of the things we did way back in the last day we were in session in March was to open up the unemployment process. And a lot of people went on unemployment when businesses were either shut down or had problems with it. It also gave a benefit to the employers where it would not work against their experience rating, which is a whole issue of itself. But we had a very large fund in a very large amount of money in our unemployment fund that we had built up since 2008, 2009, when we went into the red way back in the last recession. So we had that available to people. The other thing that we did in some of the Corona relief, virus relief fund was also to go and have And this was only $2.3 million. We originally had a little more than that, like 3 million, but the Senate cut it back to 2.3. But this was a fund where you could go and get a grant to go to one of the colleges at the Vermont State Colleges, the largest school. This was done like in October, and it was specifically aimed at people who were laid off, unemployed waitresses, single mothers, people who were working in the restaurant or hospitality business who wanted to upscale their education. It was just for certificates, very quick, short courses. All 4 campuses or all 4 colleges of the state colleges participated. The number 1 enrollee was, of course, Community College of Vermont, Vermont Tech, and Northern Vermont University had large numbers of students as well, and they had served well almost 1,000 students for a very short-term, quick thing to help people take courses that would give them better skills to change careers or to upscale their experiences and their credits for their existing careers. For instance, a waitress might take bookkeeping or something like that. But this was apparently a very popular and very successful program. The other thing, and this was something the McClure Foundation did, is it gave every graduating senior from high school a free course at CCV for the fall semester, where they also hooked into all of their advising and their counseling and a whole bunch of other resources that CCV provides. But that's the kind of thing that was done. It was only $2.3 million, but probably per capita, that was really one of the better things that we did to reach those people you're talking about, Marilyn. And we're talking about how we do that and continue that again.
Yeah, I guess.
And those women and minority grants were also geared toward a lot of these same populations. And the same thing with the micro business, which is run out of Human Services. So there was money given to those things, and not enough. There just wasn't enough money to help everybody. Yeah, and of course, we have large employers that didn't qualify for any financial aid. All of the big hotels, all of the ski resorts that have, they employ about 1,000 people each, and those people couldn't get any federal money because they made more money than the cap allowed.
Yeah, no,
but
yeah, those are really great programs, and I do know people did take advantage of it, and I did know about the number of 1,000 people and the McClure Foundation, but I'm just thinking about those people that don't know where to go and how to do it. Where do they, or even the employment people, I don't think people know how to use unemployment well. And maybe I'm digging too deep, but there's a lot of people out there that just don't know where they're going or what they're going to do. So is there going to be any additional resources and money out there for people like this that perhaps we could start directing people to?
Well, one of the problems with the UI system is that, and I think everybody knows this that's been in the legislature, because they all tried to help out. There was a huge group of people who helped deal with the issues. They were totally flooded. I mean, when they normally get 4,000 people in a month, they had like 85,000 people. I mean, it was crazy. It was insane.
Well, that's good to hear that people were reaching out to try to get help.
Oh yeah. But I know people, in our office who had to spend all day 600 phone calls to get through to the Department of Labor, to the UI system. They hired contractors. They still have contractors in there.
Yeah.
But it was not designed for that kind of a volume, and it was just overwhelming. And I know some of the members of the legislature helped out with that.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle.
I'd like to switch the conversation to vaccination a little bit. I'm a board member of Notch, and as a federally qualified health center, we are able, willing, and ready to help with the vaccination. I'd like to know the level of involvement that our legislators have in any of it. It seems like the governor has definitely the driver's seat on that, but is the legislature involved at all into the vaccination process, into this designation of where the vaccine goes? I mean, rural environment, which is what Notch serves, is definitely being question as far as when are we going to get vaccine and how much of it are we going to get. So I'm just wondering if you guys are involved into it, and if so, could you give us some news about it?
Then could I jump in
Sure,
on
go
that?
ahead, Mike. Well, Randy had his hand up first, but is this directed to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Michelle, it's a really great question. I mean, all of us are anxious to see the vaccination campaign roll out successfully. And we know that there's been an enormous amount of uncertainty about when the volume of vaccines will come in, and the uncertainty and the way that the federal management of that has rolled out has really made it so that, you know, when we had our caucuses last week, it was very clear from the chairs of the House Human Services and Healthcare that we in the legislature cannot act like we're the Department of Health. You know, we as citizen legislators need to leave the rollout of the vaccines to the health experts and go by the science and the policy, and that those people are in the Department of Health. And we've been asked, certainly, I mean, I have constituents in various different, you know, professions that consider themselves frontline workers that are frustrated with the age banding decision that the governor and the Department of Health made. But I think it would be really dangerous for us as legislators to try to step in at this point and direct that. But at the same time, you know, our role is to, you know, listen to what they're doing, make sure they are following the science, and to provide feedback from our constituents. And if folks have specific feedback, you know, we're happy to pass that along. I'm really cognizant that if we bring politics into what should be a data-driven, expert-driven rollout of who gets the vaccines and how they're distributed, it could lead to real problems and a lack of trust in the state government. So I think the legislators have all been trying to watch and understand and communicate good information, but we're just being very cautious about trying to step in and create confusion around the vaccine rollout.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Randy Brock and then KVNs.
Just to respond to that last question, I'm in full agreement that, you know, Vermont has the lowest COVID infection rate in the nation, the lowest death rate per capita in the nation. If we want to screw it up, get the legislature involved in trying to micromanage it. I think we are following the science, and I think we should continue doing what we do. I think we should pass on as legislators to the department and to the administration what we hear from our constituents. But otherwise, I think it's noses in and fingers out. I would like to also go back, though, to the earlier question of how do people know what's going on, what resources are available, and how to use them. The easiest reference is to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, ACCD's website. And right on their lead page is a resources for individuals. And it includes a listing of those resources and also an excellent Q&A so that people can understand where they go to find information about particular issues, ranging from eviction to help with housing to financial issues, direction to the Department of Labor to deal with the labor issues. And that website has, again, a great deal of information that answers questions. So that's the first place that I would direct people to. I do think, though, as Marilyn suggested, it might be an excellent idea to suggest to ACCD to add another section to their page about those resources ranging from OEO to other private organizations that could provide counseling or other assistance, so that, again, there's an addition to that central location to provide help. And I'll make that recommendation to ACCD.
Thank you. KVNs.
Hi, Kelly Vians at the St. Albans Recreation Department. And I just wanted to echo Dave Southwick's excuse me, comments on how great the state staff was. Through the Recreation Department and through HARDAC, we applied for 4 different grants, and all the way, you shoot an email, you get an answer right back. I know everyone hears when there's a problem, but this is a difficult situation. I know they're overworked, but they were amazing, and we got answers immediately. And I would also like to thank Randy and Mike for acknowledging that our Department of Health has done a great job, and leave it to them. I don't think any of us need. Everyone wants a vaccine. I don't think any of us need to be messed up in it. Let them roll it out.
Thank you,
That's
Kelly.
it.
Okay, Reg Beliveau.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. Just to answer Michelle's question and not to minimize the work that Senator Brock has been doing, and I appreciate that all the work that you folks do. The Notch has contacted us locally. So we are working with the Notch right now, and we should be scheduling some vaccinations very soon. So I know they're working with Richford as well, and we should be having something in Swanton shortly.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question of Kelly and David, if he's still there. One of the issues that we had was the issue of municipal grants. That was not as, there wasn't as much money left for municipal grants for the communities, for their events. There was a thing called Better Places, Better Spaces, that did get a little bit of money at the very end. Is this something that the municipalities, actually anyone else from the town, I know Jessica's here, anyone else that has an issue about Reg Beliveau, anything about municipal help with the coronavirus relief fund money?
This is Dave. I'll just quickly, I think that again, just on the theme of great support, everything was there. One of the things that I did notice about the grant that we applied for the municipality was that the timeline on it was so very, very tight.
Yeah.
That was, I really don't mean that to be a complaint. It was just that the money was available, but it had to be spent by December 30th, and we had more work to do. We ended up giving almost half of the grant that we were awarded that we thought we could get done, but by the time it was issued, there wasn't that much time to even spend the money that we had, and we had to have it all done by December 30th or whatever the date was. So I felt that we did as much as we could with the time that we had. So my only comment would be that it feels like these are very, very short time span pieces, and maybe to tag on what some others are saying is that by the time you find it, get your application in, you've eaten up a little bit of that time. But I also understand that it's, the money shows up on Tuesday or on Monday, and you try to roll it out on Tuesday. So I know it's hard on all the ends, but I felt that again, I just thought it was a very fair process, and we got a lot of good support, and we were able to do good work with the amount of time and amount of money that we had from the municipal side. Chip Sawyer could probably answer if you wanted to reach out to him specifically. Chip might be able to answer a little more generally about other programs that might be appropriate for municipalities. I'm speaking specifically from permitting and zoning office, and what we could do with the grant that we had.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, of course, the federal government mandated the money be spent by December 30th. Anyone else? Reg, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you again. Yeah, we had the runway was very short to try to help with our ratepayers for the to help them get reimbursements. I know I think my assistant manager is still on, and she did a lot of work, a lot of time getting all that rolled out. And I know we still had the ability to help a lot of the ratepayers there. We did receive some good return on that, but yeah, it was difficult for a lot of our customers to wade through that paperwork. They didn't really want you to help, but we assisted these people because a lot of them, the seniors especially, they didn't have internet accounts. But the other thing that we found difficult or concerning to us was that Burlington Electric was able to get a essential workers refund for their line workers. And we weren't aware of that. We were under the assumption that we weren't eligible. So, all of our line workers, our public works, our sewer, our water, plant operators were all here during the entire COVID process. So, I mean, if we missed something for our employees, that was unfortunate, but I don't know how some people made it and some people didn't.
You're talking about the hazard pay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Any other concerns? Oh, Michelle.
Just a point of to the person that said that he was concerned about the gun legislation. I want to add my voice and said I am very concerned about the gun legislation as well, and that I hope that you will not support such nonsense. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I just want to say that the governor is going to be giving his budget address this week. This will be an important piece to see where the state's going with based on our revenues and our expected expenditures. You know, and then after that comes out, a lot of the committees will then be going to work more with more focus on the things that the budget lays out. And a lot of the issues you've raised today have been really helpful for that effort. Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Lynn. I tried to get in early. I'm having problems with my buttons today. They don't work because I'm hitting them. I just wanted to mention that, as we know, the portals are open today for registration to people to get an appointment for the vaccine. And they've opened up to the 75+ category. One thing is very important. I mean, there is a phone number, I believe, that these people can call and get an appointment. However, if you've got relatives, friends, or neighbors that are of that age group, chances are they are not online or computer savvy enough with which to do it online. But the online method is the preferred way, and certainly reach out to them and offer to do it for them. My understanding is it can be done. That I heard the health department last week mention that. So just something to think about. Bob on Bob's iPad said in chat that he has done it online and it went very smooth. So that's probably the preferred way to go. And thanks to Notch for trying to get some vaccine sites up and going here in Franklin County. And I've said all along, we can do this all together, and together we'll win this situation. The other thing I'll mention just briefly on financial literacy and small business. As many of you know, I was in banking for 30+ years. That is nothing new. And I guess Lynn hit it right on the head very well. Many small business owners, especially the single sole proprietor business, and be it a contractor, plumber, electrician, what have you, are so busy doing the work for their customers that they push the paperwork off to the side. And it's very unfortunate, especially when you go to do a grant application or something other than maybe getting their yearly numbers together to give it to an accountant to get their taxes done. And so that is really a real problem. The other thing, and I have not done a grant application for any of the PPE programs or anything else available to small business. I have done, since I've been self-employed, I have done grant applications through the Agriculture Department for farmers and a few other entities. And the streamlined grant applications in those cases are still 150 pages long. And that's streamlined. And it has to be done in triplicate. So that the time you compile that book with all the supporting documentation, everything else, I was running an average of about 150 pages. Hopefully that's not the case with the PPE program, but I have not been exposed to that. as I basically had to turn people away, I referred them elsewhere to get help, but they wanted to hire me to do it, and I really had a problem. I couldn't really work both sides of the street here, being in the legislature, and we were in a very extended session, as we all know, and I just didn't have time to take on that type of work. But financial literacy is very important. There's also the small business development centers that are run by the state, and they've been, over the years, they've been cut back, and that's unfortunate. And especially in these times, they certainly, I'm sure, would be able to assist people as well. But they have a website. If you just punch in small business development centers, you should be able to get that information. And I think we just tried it. One of our roles as state representatives is certainly keep the line of communication open. We assisted, as was mentioned, hundreds of people, probably thousands of people, to get their unemployment benefits when we were given the green light that we could do this, because there is such a thing as called the separation of powers. And so we did help a lot of people, and it was no easy task, but we got through it. So thank you all for also showing up today.
Okay, we have gotten in chat, there is a number to call as well as the link for the Department of Health. That would be helpful. That was sent out on chat. Is there anyone else? That's an
Lynn?
important thing to have too. Keep that information. That's a good thing to have to help people with.
Lynn, I just want to remind people too, with town meeting day coming up, that each town's going to be doing something different in how they handle it.
Yes.
So make sure to check in with your town clerk. I know St. Albans Town's going to be doing universal mail, and so is Franklin. But I believe Fletcher's not. They're doing absentee. So just make sure everyone here to check in with your town clerks and see how they're handling town meeting day.
Yes, that's important. That was the one bill that we all passed very quickly. It did give the towns flexibility in how they handle town meeting. They can have on-site, they can have mail-in, they can do whatever, they move the date if they see fit. I mean, this was a very flexible way of dealing with the COVID situation for town meeting and to help people vote. Anything else? Well, seeing none, I just want to say thank you. You were very, very informative and interesting, and I really appreciate everybody coming out. We will be having another one of these in February. It'll be a Saturday morning. I think it's February 25th, but don't hold me to that. We'll be putting notices out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with us. You know, we really want to be there to listen and to help take care of your issues. And I wish you all a very good day and a good week. Stay healthy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.